Okay, so we're going to just quickly run through some of the default imagery settings in ArcMap. So one of the things that you want to just do is consider how to change how ArcMap imports new files and set it there so you're not having to make this change every time. So what we're going to do is we have a blank version of ArcMap open here. Nothing's in there. So what we do is we're going to go to Customize, ArcMap Options, and then if you go over here to Raster, there's multiple tabs here to access various levels of settings. So the ones that we want to sort of focus on is this is not necessarily default, depends on what was done at the very first time it was done in the ArcMap instance, but always build pyramids and don't prompt in the future is typically the best one. You just want it to automatically build pyramids. It's what's going to make it run faster in ArcMap. Arc catalog, I've never changed anything here, so this can all stay default. Raster layer is where things get changed. So what you want to do is, first of all, you want to enable custom rendering defaults. And I noticed that you had been playing around with that a little bit inside the actual layer properties. So what we're doing here is we're basically setting the defaults for anything that gets added from this point forward. The one that I've used for many years and seems to provide the most natural looking product is Nearest Neighbor. The stretch type is none, so you definitely want to set it to none. If you start messing with percent clip and those other, it definitely changes the colors of what it was set to originally. So if you're bringing in an EM survey from Surfer, then those types of colors will adjust and get changed from the original. So typically you want it to look like the original, and so I use Nearest Neighbor and none. The twos here, I believe, are all default. I've never really mussed with those. Definitely do not use a gamma stretch. Again, that changes the coloring. And then a little trick that I use is to display background value of 255, 255, 255 and set it as no color. And so what that does is when you bring in an image that has portions of a basic white background, so 255, 255 is the RGB value of 0, or of white rather, and what you want to do is basically turn that into a null value. And so what that does is if you bring in a EM survey that has a white perimeter where there's really essentially no values, basically turns that into a null value, no color. And the benefit of that is if you can imagine, well, we won't imagine it, but what I'll do is I'll turn this here and I'll add an EM survey from the example that we made last time. And I believe it was test 2. Okay, so let me just show you the effects of that. So right now you can't see any difference, but there is a perimeter bounding box for this image. So when we add the underlying imagery, you're going to see the perimeter of the image extents for this particular EM survey. And of course my world imagery is not working. So let's add something different. Topographic, it doesn't really matter. It's just some sort of form of color or something underneath the image to see the difference. Oh, I know what the problem is. Okay, so what we want to do is set the zone to 11. We want to zoom to layer. So what happened is that there was no georeferencing attached to the TIFF image. So it being the first piece of data that was brought in, it basically set my data frame properties to something default. It was probably just NAT83 geographics that long. So now we can turn on the imagery now that we're in the correct projection space. And in fact, since we're in the same area, we'll just add the Esri imagery. And there you go. So what you see now is you see the white bounding box of the original image. So that setting of applying the display background value of 255, 255, 255, which is white, it basically turns that into null values. So now you have better control over the image. You're not displaying things that you don't need, and you can set your transparencies and whatnot. So you're only displaying pixels that have actual values, okay? So that is, in a nutshell, the things that you need to worry about. So yeah, customize ArcMap options, and then you go to the raster tab, and then there's multiple tabs where you can adjust. Typically it's raster dataset and raster layer where you change, and these are the settings that I use. The rest of them, yeah, I've never changed, never had to, and it's all worked quite well. So that's basically it. We can get into some more complicated and more complex stuff further on, but if you want just a natural looking image that mimics what's created in the original image, then that's how you do it. Now, let's say for example that you've already brought an image in with different settings. It's quite easy to fix that. So all you do is delete the files that ArcMap creates based on the settings that are set at the time. So all you have to do then is delete these two files, the GSR2 and the OVR files. So when you delete them, then make sure that it's removed. So let's say test2. So let's say we'll remove that. And we'll save this as a project, and we'll just call it test for now. So we remove that test2 image. So now we can go here, delete these values, reopen ArcMap project. And we'll re-add that layer. And as you can see from checking the properties, the display value is 255, 255, stretch, and so this will all match whatever settings that you have here set in the ArcMap options. So instead of doing it once at a time, you can sort of just do an end route, delete all that referencing information, and redo it based on the overriding principles of the ArcMap project or software rather, or you can do it in the individual layer like we showed here. So that's how I do it. Works pretty well. If you have any questions, just give me a call.